Yeah. I just push those. Well, good morning, everybody. It's very nice to see you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's been a pleasure serving the board in the state of Idaho, back in DC, on various issues. And this last year has been pretty busy. I think we're going to be busy again in 2026. So hopefully we'll get some more done for the state. In terms of switch over here. In terms of the appropriations process, we had a shutdown. I don't know whether you guys heard about that, but it was 43 days, longest shutdown in the history of the federal government. They got going and put in a continuing resolution to fund the government through January 30th. Obviously, that's next week. And the House just yesterday passed the rest of the appropriations bills for fiscal year 26 and handed it over to the Senate and then promptly left town. So the Senate is kind of in a jam, but I think they've already pre-negotiated a lot of these things. And so hopefully they won't have any trouble getting all of these done and not have another shutdown threat, at the end of next week. Energy and water and interior environment bills were included in the first little minibus after the CR, which included ag and a couple other appropriations bills. So we're hopeful that the president will sign it here in the coming days. It's sitting on his desk when he gets back from Switzerland. So we're hopeful that gets done. Bureau Reclamation ended up a little bit short from their current numbers, about almost $300 million short from the FY25 extension of the FY24, which was a full year CR in FY25. WaterSmart only got about $15 million, which is about $40 million less than they had last year. The drought response is about $20 million less. Cooperative watershed management was $2 million less, but they did get $6 million. That's a grant program that can start some watershed councils and collaborative efforts in river basins. WinAct storage got $62.5 million. Typically in the past, we've seen as much as $135 million for WinAct. So that got cut substantially as well. There's not a lot of extra funding. The additional funding for ongoing work, typically that's not earmarked, typically ends up being between 20 and 50 million. I think there's $5 million for that. But they did have additional funding, but they basically said where it was going to go. So, we can, not a lot of competition for that money at this point. Yeah.
To the watershed program where they fund the basic studies that we're looking at.
No, the basin studies has been a separate line item, and the basin studies line item did not get any funding this year. So I think any funding that they're using now for basin studies is carryover from previous Congress. So hopefully that will continue to keep them going until we get some more funding in that pot. It does encourage, in the report language, it does encourage precipitation enhancement. And so that was an interesting comment in the report language. And it did not do what the Senate version of the bill did, which was raise the aging infrastructure account by $200 million to fund basically what they cut out of the bill. And that would have diminished the amount of money in that revolving fund that basically can be used for things like urban canals and fixing federal facilities that are managed by non-federal entities, those kinds of things. So we were able to save that fund from being rated to pay for annual operations. Army Corps did a little better. They got $1.8 billion more than they had in FY25. It might have something to do with the fact that the chairman of the Senate Energy and Water Committee is from Louisiana. So that may have helped in that regard. So we've got a little educating to do on the appropriation side about beer reclamation in the West. They have new staff on both sides of the aisle, or both sides of Congress. So we've got some meetings that we need to prepare for the Water Board to help on that. Construction got about $3 billion, environmental infrastructure about $14 million, investigations $150 million, planning assistance to states a measly $5 million, and these are national. These are for nationwide, so they're not going to go very far on that stuff. We still have the last year of the bipartisan infrastructure law, or the IIJA, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The aging infrastructure account, reclamation is planned for $735 million to go out for loans out of that account. And that's a total out of a total of $3.2 billion that was put in that account by the IIJA. WinAct storage, they've pretty much exhausted those funds out of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. That was about a $1 billion amount. Small storage grants, there's a $17 million that they're planning on putting out for competition this year out of the $100 million that was given. Rehabilitation of reclamation projects suffering critical failure. In other words, the Milk River project in Montana. They've basically given them portioned out the entire amount before this year. And then the CARE Act projects, the same thing. That money has pretty much been appropriated. Water Smart grants, there's $6.5 million left out of the $400 million for FY26. So we'll probably see some of that come out in the form of water and energy efficiency grants. The Title 16, which is the water reuse and recycling, for the regular grants is $27 million, $28 million, and then for the large projects is $132. The large projects are projects that are cost over $500 million, and typically those are big Southern California projects. The rest of the IIJA spending plan desalination is going to get $80 million for grants. Authorized rural water projects, $92 million. Those are typically in the Midwest. Dam safety's got $350 million, a portion for FY26. Cooperative watershed management, $20 million. Aquatic ecosystem, $68 million, and multi-benefit water improvements, $27 million. So this funding, we still haven't seen a lot of grants come out yet. And typically with a change in administration, you're going to see a slowdown in that kind of stuff because they want to direct this funding to what their priorities are and not from the previous administration. So we're starting to hear that there's going to be more of these grant programs announced. And so we're going to keep an eye on those. But some of these are, I think, could work for some projects in Idaho. And we certainly want to keep our eye on those. The Inflation Reduction Act, if you recall, was funded through 2026. This is the last year for that program. The funding, I believe, will go away in September, the end of September. There's $4 billion for Western drought mitigation funding. Basically, it was focused on the Colorado River, but they did open it up to other states, earlier. I think about $500 million has gone out for non-Colorado River drought mitigation. There was $550 million included in the IRA for disadvantaged communities' domestic water supply. This went through the Bureau of Reclamation. I'm not sure how much of that money has been spent. So that's another place that we should be asking Reclamation where that money went. And then there was a $25 million over canal solar project pilot and demonstration. I believe some of that money went down to California for some, and maybe Arizona. I can't recall where exactly some of those projects were. The other thing that did pass this year is the One Big Beautiful Bill, which funding expires in 2034. There was $1 billion for construction-related activities that restore and increase the capacity or use of existing water conveyance facilities or increase the capacity of existing surface water facilities managed by the Bureau of Reclamation. That money has still not been announced. We expect that anytime. We have requested $60 million for 2 Idaho projects, LOID project and the New York Canal lining project. We're hopeful that we'll be successful, at least for part of that. I know there was about $4 billion in requests for that $1 billion in funding. This is non-reimbursable funding, so it's very sought after for various things. But I think we have a good, we got a good jump on that. We were some of the first requests that came in after that bill was passed, and certainly doesn't hurt to have the state behind it and ready to match those funds with non-federal funding. So we believe early next month we'll probably hear something. We hope. As far as I'm told, anyway, it's in the department for final approval. With the BLM issues that we've been working on, we did work on the Aquifer Recharge Flexibility Act amendments that passed Congress in 2021, which was basically the bill that we had proposed. If enacted, it would fix the BLM eligibility issue for third parties to use existing roads for aquifer recharge. HR 331, which was authored by Mr. Fulcher, did pass the House. It's sitting in the Senate. We've been working with Senator Risch's office to work with the committee, Energy and Natural Resource Committee, to try to get a bill out of committee to match up with that so they can go to the floor. It's difficult to get things like this done unless the stars align and and everything kind of falls into place. So in the meantime, we just continue to push the Senate to pass that bill and get it to the president's desk in some way, shape, or form. We think it's a non-controversial bill. The problem has been that the Senate Energy and Natural Resource Committee has been a little slow in getting going on some markups and hearings. The first hearing is scheduled for water bills is scheduled for the end of February. So we're hopeful that'll be a turning point for that bill, and we can kind of get that get going with either hotline it or get it through with a bunch of other bills. We worked this year with your staff and the Bureau of Reclamation on figuring out what to do with the upper Payette storage contracting issues in Cascade and Deadwood. We think there's a path forward. It's with reclamation staffing issues. We think that there's some challenges there to get that done. So we certainly want to roll up our sleeves and maybe elevate some of this to DC to get some support for local staffing to get those contracts done. It's a complicated deal because of the fact that it's tied to the Nez Perce agreement, and certainly we don't. The one rule and the second rule in lobbying is not to do any harm. So we certainly want to be cognizant of a very intentional strategy to make sure that we don't mess up that Nez Perce agreement in the meantime. We had a Washington, D.C. trip in July. Some of the board's chairman and vice chairman came back along with Brian, and we met with quite a few folks, the delegation, committee staff, and top appointees in the administration. So I thought that was a successful trip. We've been working on the Urban Canal Modernization Act. That bill has been reintroduced in both the House and Senate. We fully expect that that bill will be included in the ledge hearing in the Senate in Energy and Natural Resource at the end of February. That bill, you recall, did pass the Senate, did not pass the House last Congress. It was modified because Mr. Manchin, then at the time was chairman of the Energy and Natural Resource Committee, wanted it to be, I believe it was 25% cost share instead of 35%. And require that 10% come from the state or local governments, which knocked out quite a few projects because they just didn't have that kind of funding. So it's gone back. The bill has been reintroduced as the original version, the 35% non-reimbursable funding and long-term financing for fixing these urban canals of concern. And it is bipartisan in the both House and Senate. So we think that's a positive as well. So hopefully we can get that done. And then finally, the S1257, looking at the CARE Act projects and trying to broaden that authority. While there's no money left in that IIJA, we want to try to broaden the authority and extend that authority. So if there ever is funding available or we can reprogram, the Bureau will have authorization to help out on some of these projects at CARE Act. The reason there's not a House bill yet is because we're working with Representative Simpson's staff to modify that bill a bit because of the impending sunsetting of the IIJA. That authority will go away, so we want to make sure that we get some kind of an extension of that authority to reauthorize it and keep it alive.
Mr. Chairman, on that XM stuff, the Reclamation's been pretty strict about what XM is, like an impending, immediate to occur failure. Is there an effort to expand that definition?
Well, you're talking about emergency XM versus just regular XM. Yes, they have in the past been, basically looking at emergencies as those that have already happened, rather than those that are impending to happen and ready to blow up. They want to, they basically figure that we'll let it blow up and then we'll fix it. They don't, then they also look at it as not a long-term fix. They look at it as a Band-Aid. If going in, it's either you do surgery or you put a Band-Aid on it. They want to put a Band-Aid on it, let somebody else do the surgery later. So it's a little bit of a problem. But we have been working with Reclamation on that, and certainly our issues, for instance, in the Yakima-Tieton Canal, I think you may have heard of that up in Yakima Basin, Washington State. They had a forest fire up there, burned up their canal, screwed up their old concrete. It's basically they had boulders and trees and stuff that were falling on the canal because it's all a conduit. It's not in the ground. And the report language in this last bill, because Senator Murray's the ranking member on the Appropriations Committee and also ranking member on Energy and Water, she got some report language in that says, Reclamation, you will make this an emergency. And basically make it, so that they can at least get that 35% non-reimbursable funding out of the aging infrastructure account. We'll see whether that works. Obviously, report language is not law, but when I was in administration, we were told that, yeah, it's not law, but you better pay attention to it. So otherwise, it's you're up there talking to the committee and oversight hearings. Anyway, bottom line is yeah, there's been a lot of efforts to try to get that fixed. And one of the things is the Urban Canal Act, because those are basically emergencies ready to happen. The other bill I want to bring your attention to, and we have, and one thing about it is we did, Wesley Hipke was back in early 2025 to do testimony on the Aquifer Recharge Flexibility Act amendments. We also provided a testimony for the hearing record on HR 338, the Every Drop Counts Act. What that would do would be reauthorize, again, part of the IIJA, it would reauthorize the small storage grant program and expand the amount of water that would be considered a small storage for aquifer recharge from 30,000 acre feet to 150,000 acre feet. What we found, and we've worked with your staff to get those numbers. What we found is that Reclamation didn't quite know how to calculate the 30,000, whether that's how much capacity it is in the facility, or how much water gets basically put into the ground. And as you all know, one year you're going to have a lot of water to put in, the next year you're going to have none. So it's one of those things that we have to have. We have to have more. We have to think about it in larger terms, in terms of aquifer recharge as a small storage project. And this is not a total recharge, let's say it's not the total Eastern Snake Plain aquifer that we're talking about, it's each individual recharge basin or recharge facility that we're building. And this is a 25% grant. It's competitive, and all you have to do is we have to put in a feasibility report. Reclamation has all of the parameters for that. They have to approve it, and then you're eligible for that grant. So Idaho would be very competitive, I think, in these programs. And if we can get this act done, which in the House it's bipartisan, and we're working with Senator Risch's staff to try to get it introduced in the Senate. So that's something we'll be working on. The next tranche of confirmed nominees. Last year I was here, talked about the cabinet level. Now we've got the sub-cabinet level folks, and Kate McGregor is the new deputy secretary. She was in the previous Trump administration. We know her well. She's a good person. Andrea Travnik, many of you will probably know her as well. And she's now the assistant secretary for water and science at Interior. Scott Cameron is the acting commissioner. I've worked with Scott for a lot of years. He was in the Bush administration with me, and very solid guy, and we talked quite a bit. Dustin Shearer is the senior advisor to the assistant secretary. I think he's now deputy assistant secretary. He's a good person. He used to work for a senator from Colorado. Jessica Kramer is assistant administrator for Office of Water at EPA. Peggy Brown's her deputy. She's from Baker City, so she's a good Westerner. Adam Tell is the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works at the Department of Defense. Lee Forsgren is his deputy, and Lee was in the previous Trump administration at EPA. So we got some good people back there now that are confirmed by the Senate in the seats. The other confirmation that I didn't put on here is Tim Petty, who is now the Assistant Secretary of Commerce over oceans and atmosphere, and it includes NOAA fisheries. So he's going to have some interesting times over there at Commerce. Priorities that we've been working on, the WOTUS and PFAS are always in the news, and certainly we just got done with the Waters of the United States public comment period, and we're looking forward to seeing what the administration has in store for that rule. And then, of course, let the court battles begin on that one. Infrastructure and NEPA streamlining have been key components of our work, as well as ESA and the lower Snake River dams, obviously are always a hot topic. We've been working with the Trump administration and the Bureau of Reclamation on some reforms. After the exodus of many of their senior staff and second level management, we feel like, and this is we meaning national groups like Family Farm Alliance, like National Water Resources Association. We feel like, the Corps, we heard that the Corps, when they lost all their folks, they said, well, what used to take us a month is now going to take us 6 months. And we believe with the Bureau, we don't think that's an option. That's not a good option. It's certainly not an option for many of us because we have work to do. So we've basically taken on NEPA, procurement, and their internal review process as 3 areas where stakeholders can help the agency get some streamlining, get some efficiency, and make sure that timelines are met and that we can get some timely answers out of them. The NEPA is about done. We've got guidance about ready to go out. We'll probably see that end of this month, first of next, to the staff. Certainly we'll share that with all of you. That will offer more opportunities for applicants and partners to prepare the NEPA documents and the analysis. Oversight will still remain with Reclamation. It basically starts at when Reclamation staff comes out and look at a project. We start with how many CEs do we have that we can use, categorical exclusion, so we don't have to do an assessment or an EA or a EIS, that we can actually get an exclusion and bypass NEPA. Going through NEPA, I mean, NEPA allows this, but there's all these CEs that reclamation has been reluctant to use for some reason in the past. For instance, the head gates at the Nampa Meridian Canal that are currently being done, they had to do an extensive NEPA process. Lori Gray they had a lot of that done. It had to go through a bunch of review, and technically that could have been a categorical exclusion. So this is a big deal. This is a kind of a generational opportunity to really kind of get this thing down to where we can actually work with the agency and have our stakeholders work with them in a much more robust fashion. Also, the law now says, after one of the bills that was passed last year included the ability to stack CEs. So if USDA has a category exclusion for something that happens to apply to a Bureau reclamation project, even though the Bureau doesn't have that CE on record, they can use the USDA CE to cover that and basically bypass the NEPA process. So there's lots of innovative things going on right now, and we think that's all going to be positive, we hope. The other thing that we're helping with is on the procurement side, Secretary Order 3446 was announced here about a month ago. It basically says to streamline the construction of water projects by utilizing stakeholder assistance rather than just relying on federal procurement regulations. So we'll see how that works. Devil's in the details on that one, but in a nutshell, if we had a single purpose piece of a reserve work, something that reclamation typically builds and rebuilds and maintains, that technically could be turned over to a contractor, a water contractor that could do the work outside of the federal regulations, and that would help solve a lot of problems, including save a bunch of money. And so that's something that we think is certainly a good idea. Like I say, we're working on the details. Reclamation has a second webinar next week on this secretarial order, and so we'll see how that goes. Obviously, the water contractors that do the work have to be qualified, pre-qualified, and it's obviously under the oversight of the Bureau. But it does pretend to be very much more efficient and economical way to do things. Finally, the third thing is looking at reclamation's internal reviews. A lot of times, the things that we ask for permission for take months to get through their internal review, and sometimes engineering drawings and that kind of thing. There's a battle of the engineers in Denver, and we end up having to pay twice for things that we shouldn't. So I think that's something that we want to look at, cutting the red tape, shortening the timelines of approval, and a little more transparency in how reclamation looks at these things. That's to come. Just currently, the House is a very small margin GOP control with the untimely death of Doug LaMalfa in California, and the resignation of Marjorie Taylor Greene out of Georgia. The House is probably 1 or 2 seats majority. So it's very difficult for Speaker Mike Johnson to manage, as you probably have seen in the paper. The major issues, they're looking at a possibility of another budget reconciliation. You recall the One Big Beautiful Bill was the first budget reconciliation done under this Congress, and certainly we're going to be following that. 27 appropriations are about ready to start up. The administration is supposed to have their budget to Congress first Monday in February. They're not going to make that deadline. They haven't made it for some time, but we expect the budget to come out sometime in March, I would think. Energy natural resource policies, obviously we have a hearing coming up in February in the Senate. The House has been holding hearings pretty much on a regular basis, and so we keep track of those. Regulatory reform, that's something that's off and on. The House passed a bunch of regulatory reform bills, and certainly we think some of those have very good pieces in that. The Senate is probably not going to take them up and pass them as is. The Senate has been working on regulatory reform, but it fits and starts over there because of different things that happen with the administration. So stay tuned on that. Farm bill, we think probably going to be a farm bill. Farm bill got funded out of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So the funding is there, but the farm bill was not passed. So we'll look for a skinny farm bill coming up this year, hopefully. WRDA, this is the WRDA year. So we're going to see some Water Resource Development Act bills out there. Language, that's a bill that authorizes and studies and projects for the Army Corps of Engineers, but also can be a vehicle for Bureau reclamation bills as well in the past. And obviously border security has been a tough issue for Congress. GOP is still in control of the Senate. They don't have 60 votes, so it's not really full control, but it is a majority. Certainly we've seen a difference because of the chairman change in the chairman of the committees that pretty much drives the agenda, and certainly been interesting to work with the new chairman and staff. The confirmations, obviously they've been working on those. They put in a new procedure that allowed for confirmations of nominees in a group rather than individually. That's sped up the process quite a bit. A lot of the folks that I mentioned were beneficiaries of that process to get through, and certainly that's been something that's helped. Again, budget reconciliation, energy, natural resource appropriations, all the different things that we talked about are going to be priorities in this Senate. For our priorities next year, obviously we talked a lot about legislation that we'll be working to try to get through Congress. Infrastructure, we still have the Anderson Ranch raise in process, the New York Canal lining LOID, Upper Payette storage, and obviously we want to plan a Washington, D.C. trip again this year to bring the board back to D.C. and talk about your priorities. So with that, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'd be happy to stand for any other questions that you might have.
Board members, any questions for Mr. Limbaugh?
Chairman.
Yeah.
Mark, on that push to use more CEs, one of the things that's going to be concerning is early this week, I think, a judge in Oregon allowed environmental groups to challenge a 30-year-old CE on forest thinning projects and struck it down. So there's going to be, as we spend more time trying to rely on CEs, there's going to be more litigation on that precedent if it stands in the Ninth Circuit.
Yeah, it's Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, that's always an issue, and I would think when it comes to forest thinning, you could do a full EIS and still get sued. So, but CEs are a very good tool, and typically one of the things that we're talking with reclamation about on NEPA reforms is risk analysis, and the risk of getting sued over fixing a headgate versus thinning a forest are two different things. And certainly we hope that the CEs can be used in a common sense approach to some of these things that currently you're spending a lot of money just to get through the NEPA process, just to update a headgate or a turnout or whatever. And so that's the kind of stuff that we're thinking, it doesn't make sense. And reclamation in the past has typically been, they make a decision at the field level. Yeah, we need an EA. That's, a couple $100,000 when the CE would work. And there has been no way for the applicants to challenge that in the process. So we're making it so the new guidance will be that decision can be talked about at the regional director level to determine whether that's the correct application of NEPA or not. So lots of things coming up that are going to be, I think, more transparent, more workable for the applicants in these kinds of projects.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, Mark.
Ryan.
So all the misinformation out there on weather modification cloud seeding will the feds ever try to mess with our, cloud seeding programs in the mountain states?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Olmstead, I'm not sure. There's obviously always a chance that the feds may mess with pretty much anything we do. But I think the bottom line here, it was interesting to see the language in the report language. That's why I pulled it up. expressing interest in weather modification and precipitation enhancement. I think that, the more we can show that it works and that we can measure the results, the less chance that we're going to see that. I think there always has been some consternation about everything from what contrails from airplanes to everything else that's killing us all. And I think that the bottom line is that we got to rely on science. We got to look at the kinds of things that are basically that we can efficiently and effectively measure the results and show the return on investment. And regardless of who's in the White House or whatever, I think these kinds of things are important for the Western states as we deal with weather, inconsistencies, that kind of thing. So, but I haven't seen anything yet that's really come out.
Okay.
Dean, or, we use NCAR for some of our, analysis to figure out where we're going to do our cloud seeding. Where's NCAR, meaning what's National
Center for Atmospheric Science?
Yeah, I've heard talks that they're going to shut that down, or what do you hear on that?
That I'd have to look into. I haven't. I'm not familiar with NCAR, so we need to probably take a look at that. We didn't. If Brian, if you could send me some information, I can take a look at that. There is a climate center in Colorado.
That's it.
I'm not sure they got the funding that they wanted for that. So we'll have to see whether that goes. If that's the center in Colorado.
Yeah, they're the ones that do our studies on where we can effectively cloud seed. So we are.
Well, that's a good observation that we can make when we're back in DC.
Okay, anything else? We're just still in a holding pattern to get a commissioner approved, and probably got to have that happen before we get a regional director here in the Pacific Northwest region.
I wouldn't say that. I think there's two different processes there, and because of the fact that we have heard of no one that's in the mix for commissioner, which doesn't mean that there's not somebody there, because they're pretty tight-lipped about that kind of stuff. But we have heard that they're continuing to nose around with people in the West looking for somebody. So I would think that those decisions can be made, at the assistant secretary level. And we do have an assistant secretary in place. So I wouldn't say that a lack of a confirmed commissioner is going to hold up too much of this stuff, in my opinion.
Okay, and then a follow-up. We understand things are loosening up a little bit at Reclamation, and they are filling some vacant positions and getting back to a more normal level of functioning. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think the department did drop their hiring freeze, although the current administration is very hands-on with a lot of these decisions. So it takes a little bit longer to get folks hired and puts things on the street. So, but it has loosened up a little bit from what I understand. There was talk of another RIF, a reduction in force across the agencies. I think that's probably going to be, if that happens, it's probably going to be more surgical and more directly strategic, and rather than just across the board like we've seen in the past. So stay tuned on that. But I think they have allowed for some hirings to happen.
Okay, all right. I think we're good. Thank you, Mark. We appreciate our relationship with you and your efforts on our behalf. Keep track of them people back there for us. We need to keep our finger on what's going on.
Yeah, you bet. And it's really been an honor and a pleasure to work with all of you. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, we have public comment. Did anyone sign up for public comment? Here it comes. Okay, do we want to do the Lost Valley people now, or do we want to do that when we get to there?
I think, if their topic is Lost Valley, we'll at that agenda item.
Okay, Lost Valley folks, are you okay deferring comment until we bring up your agenda item? Okay. Okay, Tony Dixie,
Same.
okay, they're the same, okay. All right, well, we'll just take it as it comes then. All right, next up on the agenda is the financial report. Neely, are you handling that?
Yes.
Yes. Let me see if I can get the materials. Just go back here and share.
Yes. This is.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As of December 31st, 2025, the board's available and committed balances are as follows. In the Secondary Aquifer Planning Management and Implementation Fund, the board has a cash balance of roughly $40.4 million, a committed balance of roughly $23.9 million, and an uncommitted balance of roughly $16.4 million. In the revolving development account, the board has a cash balance of roughly $34.7 million, a committed balance of roughly $26.1 million, and an uncommitted balance of approximately $8.5 million. The board's water management account, there's a cash balance of a little over $341 million, total committed funds of about $335 million, and then an uncommitted funds and available funds of roughly $6 million. Looking at your ARPA appropriations, you can see the $250 million in ARPA appropriations. Then you can see how much has been expended, obligated, expended, and then committed. And that remainder between the 250 and the 259 would be funded through the water management account, as you can see in that footnote. And with that, I would stand for any questions on the financial report.
Okay, any questions for Neely? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you. Next up, governor's proposed budget. Mr. Patton, are you handling that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll discuss the governor's proposed budget for the Department of Water Resources. Given the financial situation the state finds itself in at the moment, the governor's proposed budget for the Department of Water Resources is rather encouraging. It includes many board priorities. There are also some things that are not included in the governor's proposed budget. I'll discuss those first and then talk about what is included second. First, the governor's proposed budget makes the 3% general fund holdback permanent that all state agencies had to absorb last fiscal year. So that becomes permanent going forward. It does reduce or eliminate 3 positions at the department that were vacant longer than 6 months. 2 of those were limited service positions. So what that means is they were externally grant funded positions. So there had not been funding for those 2 positions for some time and nobody in them. Those 2 positions goes away. The third was a water resource agent that was vacant. That one does hurt a little bit, but we'll absorb and move forward. Does not include a recommendation for replacement items, vehicles, computers, other types of equipment that the department uses. So, those things are on a scheduled replacement cycle. So that will ball up the replacement, the scheduled cycle a little bit, and does not include a recommendation for CEC or change in employee compensation. However, the governor's proposed budget does propose covering the increase in health insurance costs for employees. There are several, what it does include, the governor's proposed budget does include the $30 million in ongoing funds for water projects that the legislature started doing last year. There was some talk about whether that should, continue forward given the state's budget situation. It includes the $5 million transfer from general fund to the secondary fund for recharge and other sustainability projects. And it includes the $1 million transfer from the general fund to the water management account for flood management grants. So that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, board members, any questions for Mr. Patton? Okay, thank you, Brian. Next up is the Quagga mussel treatment update.
Yes, we have Jeremy Barley from the Department of Agriculture here.
Welcome, Jeremy. Thanks for coming over to visit with us today.
I'll try and get a presentation. I'll load up here real quick.
Uh-oh.
So, while that's getting loaded up, I'll just go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Jeremy Varley. I work for the Idaho State Department of Agriculture as the Chief Treatment Engineer. I've been on the Quagga project since the start of 23 and have been an ongoing part of that. And so today I appreciate the ask to come down here to talk a little bit about what's been going on and primarily focusing on what changed, what's different. This is the third year of us doing something on the water. I think I've seen a few of the faces down on the project have come and visited us down there on the river. I've seen I'm not in a life jacket today, so I'm slightly uncomfortable and not in a boat out working on that. So, but happy to be here and walk through this. Our biggest, I guess, takeaway from this as far as a treatment perspective goes is since 23, when you look at most other outside other Quagga mussel projects, you've seen an expansion of growth, a rapid expansion of growth and starting to cover more water, more areas. In 2025, we saw a reduction of about 50% of that total area that we have captured sustained populations of veligers or that larval stage of the Quagga mussel that's being reproduced and output by the adults. We only saw that in the upper section from about the top of the Twin Falls Reservoir down to just above Shoshone Falls Reservoir. So that was, to us, a very, very large success to see that we haven't seen an expansion. There's been a lot of other efforts outside of just the treatment itself, including the watercraft inspection stations that are down there at each of those boat ramps and requiring decontamination for any watercraft that's accessing or leaving that water body. So really kind of honing in and focusing on trying to keep that problem there and not moving outward. We're also not seeing downstream expansion, and that's primarily due to the treatment itself of not seeing, we're actually getting to those adult populations, reducing them, and trying to now we're in the stage of kind of this seek and destroy, kind of getting those last ones. Those last ones are always going to be the hardest one to try and find. When you talk about, that's not a very large section of Snake River, but when you're trying to find something about the size of your thumbnail, that can be quite daunting to try and find in that. Needle and haystack kind of goes about the same. So with that, we did have our treatment area. It was about 83 acres up on top, and then about 113 acres going down from the Twin Falls down to Shoshone Falls. We did find 2 surviving adult populations in some dives that we had conducted as the agency down there in our pre-work, trying to find out what needed to change. Really trying to get down into the water and see what was going on. We did have our same contractor on hand in the previous years, Clean Lakes Inc. They've been a great company to work with. They can help us mobilize and then help us get this product in the water exactly how we need it to go in. We did change up the contracting a little bit this year in that instead of us working all the logistics to get all of the product in from North Carolina, brought here to Idaho and then put into the water, and then just them being the ones to applicate, we actually put that ordering of the chemical all on them, just to try and clean up all the billing, trying to clean up everything that goes within logistically trying to get 63,000 gallons of product here to Idaho for the application. We did change up a little bit. Instead of just doing metered drip boxes and deep applications in the deep holes, we also incorporated a new style of application on the shorelines, and also an invention of mine for the deep water fan sprayers, to have some that would try and hit some certain key elements that we saw that we needed to address a difference with. And so we did start the application on September 30th. We did bring those areas up to 1 part per million, our target rate for quagga mussels, and then started our 200-hour exposure time to treat those mussels, and then completed our application on October 12th, and then applied a total of just over 63,000 gallons of Natrix, a chelated copper product, to the river for that application. This is just a quick snapshot of what that looks like. Here we go, pre-treatment now turning on. You can see that expansion of the copper moving down through the system. And on the lower portion of that screen, that's our dissipation area. That's where we really kind of monitor to watch how the copper is moving out, so it doesn't continue to be a contaminant moving on downstream to some ESA species that are further downstream, and just really kind of monitoring that. You can see we're shutting off now, and that's going back kind of in reverse order. It starts to dissipate and then disappear and work itself out of the system pretty quickly. Some of the challenges we had to overcome this year, we have known hydrology and bathymetry issues. It's not a really heavily accessed area in those areas, and trying to be able to understand what's going on underneath the water. Looking at this term that we came up with called safe harbors. Where are these refugia, these sites that these quagga mussels can persist in, and what leads to those, as well as looking into the sorption and dilution component of our product being available where we need it to be, and then moving out of the system as we need it to be. And then also looking at the ephemeral ponds and addressing those a little bit differently this year. One of the biggest issues with the hydrology and bathymetry was these identifications of laminar flow holes. So basically you have a historical waterfall that comes over the top, scours out. Then as we've changed the water level of the dams and other things, you get this big deep pool with water still moving over the top of it. And you have this kind of cup effect where the water really doesn't want to wash down in, wash through and wash out. So you get a lot of deposition of heavy sediments, deposition of other organic materials, as well as these quagga mussel villagers settling down into there. And right in the middle, there's a kind of a friction zone that creates a little bit of an eddy line that prevents stuff from moving back and forth across that really easily. And so it's kind of just demonstrated in this picture we took here, where you can see our Natrix product going in, and you can see there's an eddy line, kind of that bubble trail on the far right where that yellow line is at. It doesn't cross over that line very well. It's kind of held there. And that's just due to the fact of that current being a little bit more of a friction zone and preventing that from being able to cross. So you kind of get this middle area of that then becomes very difficult to how do you manage that and how you treat that. So then kind of just to kind of hone in more on these safe harbors, a potential safe harbor is basically kind of think of it as you have a freshwater input coming in. We have our treated water going downstream, and where that water comes in, it creates an area of dilution. Copper primarily affects the gills of these quagga mussels. And so if they can get a freshwater across their gill, they're going to survive and be just fine. So with every freshwater input that's in that area, which there's a lot, there's a potential for these guys to survive. So how do we identify these? The ones on shore, like this diagram shows, are very easy to see. There's a visual component to those. Ones that's not so easy are the ones that happen because there is some of that. Like if you think about Blue Heart Springs, you think about Box Canyon Springs, those come from upwellings up underneath the water. And there are some of those along the stretch of the river that those do happen. And so trying to find those and identify those. Another safe harbor that we found is where we have all of these rocks and all these heavily deposited organic sediments along the rocks. When you have treated water coming down, it almost kind of acts like a sponge. It'll help suck and make that copper come out of the system. It'll neutralize it. And then basically you have kind of this filter sponge going down. Now, the one thing about these is they're kind of like a sponge that can only suck up so much before it's reached its max capacity. So trying to find out what that max capacity is, also what that rate of draw off is, was a component to trying to figure out how these quagga mussels can survive on the backside of these rocks that behind these filter, almost kind of like filter-like structures. So I did a lot of sorption testing, primarily on my kitchen table, but that's okay. We're trying to figure them out as we were going. And basically what we found out of those was we took these microcosms, we took sediments out of the river from these areas, and then basically tested out to see how quickly the copper was being drawn off. And the majority of what we found at 1 part per million was within 24 hours, 80% of the product was moved out of the system due to sorption alone. And that was just in a very, very small jar test study. So you apply that to the river, how much more organic material you have, what's the depth of that organic material. You kind of see that problem that gets created pretty quickly of we want to make sure we're not creating these micro areas where there's this filtering occurs and can help an organism survive. Last piece of that was also identifying all of the key larger than 1 CFS spring inputs within the stream. So of those, there was 18. Some of those were from irrigation. One was a controlled spring, and then others were just 14 naturally occurring springs along that reach. Each of those got an individual visit. We did utilize some Idaho Department of Water Resources staff to come out and help us measure this water and helped us on this project to make sure we had an understanding of what was going on with that water so we could make the proper adjustments to our treatment plan for this. And then we get onto the deep pump injection systems. What we basically wanted to do was near that friction band on some of these deeper holes was basically treat, because we knew that if we treated the same way we did in 23, the same way we did in 24, we'd see the same thing where these mussels would survive. So what did we need to change? And primarily was trying to target those friction zones by incorporating a boom spray with flat fans that's away from the rock, so you get some additional microcurrents behind that to help disseminate that copper out, but then also diluting it. We did about a 60-30 or 30-70 mix on that, where 30% product, 70% water went into the tank to kind of help keep it in solution. You can see that diagram of, or that picture of the two vials there, the one on the right being the one that was that 30-70 split, helps keep that product in solution because copper is heavier than water, so it wants to settle out. So we could light the bottom up really quick, light the top up pretty good, but getting that middle area and getting it to stay there where we wanted to was the purpose of these. So we had two adult populations, both with friction zones present. One was on a straight cliff, vertical cliff, so we were able to mount a 10-foot boom. The other was on a rock slope. So we mounted a sprayer to the rock slope itself and had to adjust those just basically on the need for each site. This is a quick video of the one that was on the cliff. So this is a 10-foot boom. We dove down and basically wanted to go in and kind of see what was going on, making sure it was working properly. And it, as you can see by the blueness of the water, besides with the extra dark blue that's coming out of the nozzles there, it worked very, very well to help kind of get that product in that middle band of that cliff that you can see on the lower right of that bathymetry image, showcasing that cliff that we were trying to address underneath water. The shoreline treatments, kind of think of this as the nooks and crannies. We have all these extra little spaces that we need to fill where things could persist and survive that we wouldn't be able to necessarily do with an active boat treatment or an active drip tote. But it's all these individual little spaces. We started this after we got the main body of the river up to 1 part per million. We started really focusing on the shorelines and noticing we were seeing some drop along that near edge shore, whether that was from organic sorption or extra little springs coming in that were creating these micro little areas that have these safe harbors. And basically every 24 hours, we were evaluating those shorelines, going through with a boat with that same 70-30 mix and basically spraying right along the edges like this. Here's a bunch of bulrush, applying that directly in there so that when it hits that, it will then settle back in and wash back down in and leak that other treated water to help prevent additional dissipation of that and creating safe harbors just due to the high organic material. The pothole treatments, we did in early of 25, we did do a potash treatment in these over the winter. And then coming into this summer, we wanted to look at it a little bit differently in that now we had a very good establishment thanks to some help from Idaho Department of Water Resources. We did do some dye tests in a lot of these ephemeral ponds to find out which ones were connected versus which ones weren't. We had several that were, so it helped us kind of more hone in on the ones that were not, because the ones that are connected are still getting a treatment with our copper, with our traditional treatment, the water is moving through. But basically making those individual addresses to each of those this year. We did those with copper. For monitoring, we're very, very heavy into wanting to understand what the copper is doing in this area. So we had a total of 44 sites that we collected within the treatment area and down through the dissipation zone, down to about that, just above Clear Springs. And then basically monitoring those every 24 hours. We also had several ones per treatment section along the shorelines, as well as opportunistic sampling occurring in the deep holes that we would do every 12 to 24 hours to again monitor and assess what was happening with that copper throughout that entire reach of the water, and really tried to beef that up a little bit to make sure that we were essentially just making sure we were fully covering that and making sure we weren't leaving any stone unturned, so to speak. We also this year, we did get some increased lab capacity at our ISDA lab. So we were actually able to pull quagga mussel villager samples throughout the duration of the treatment. And within 48 hours of the initial initiation of the treatment, we started seeing dead, empty quagga villagers. Now those are more susceptible. What that was showing us is that we had the results to help show we are being very effective on any downstream movement of these guys, but also to then have that capacity to kind of show that timestamp of when that's effective against them. We also conducted several dives, 14 to be exact, throughout the duration of the treatment, checking on adult mussel populations. Basically, what we did is we went down and we covered some with mesh netting before, treated, would go down at 48-hour intervals to check them, make sure how soon were they dying, and that they were dying in these problematic areas. And we're seeing that we were actually being effective in those areas, that there was survival from previous treatments. And we saw lots of mortality down there, which is a really good sign for us for this next go around. Now I'm gonna let this play just one more time, just kind of again, we're showing that turn on, kick on, and then turn off. And while this is going, I mean, one of the biggest key takeaways from this year was we kind of put everything back on the board for what can we do differently, what can we change, what do we need to change to make sure we have an effective treatment, and treating as if this was going to be our last treatment. Trying to make sure we're getting in all those nooks and crannies, getting to all those areas that were hard to reach, that we couldn't quantify earlier because we didn't know they existed, to addressing them individually and making sure we had a full plan for this. Obviously, that goes without saying that we can't, ISDA, although we have been the leader, we have definitely relied very heavily on a lot of our partners, from private, state, federal entities, to try and get this project accomplished. A lot of work, a lot of hours on the river. But with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, questions, Brian?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, Jeremy, so the two surviving colonies, were they both in deep holes, or was one of them in a shallow refuge and one in deep?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Olmstead, with the surviving populations that we found, they were both in that laminar flow type hole situation. They only were from about 15 feet at the shallowest to about 30 feet at the deepest. It was only within that same kind of across that friction band. And both of them also had an incorporation of, there was a slight bend in that river as well. And copper doesn't corner too well, unfortunately. It was another kind of discovery as we were going along. It doesn't like to take the corner as well. I don't know why, but it just was kind of an interesting that they both had a bend at the same place, but also that same existent laminar flow hole. Because as soon as we got below that friction zone on our dives, it was completely a different story. There was no attached mussels. There was no presence of any surviving other bivalves. It was pretty empty in there. So to see that kind of difference just in that one band was the primary for that invention of those fan muzzles.
And just to follow up, you guys do it better than anybody else in the country or maybe the world. Have other states tried to hire you to?
I enjoy my job at the Department of Agriculture, and I know, but we have gone out and had a few different discussions. My colleague, Nick Zerflu, and I were both able to go down to California and visit the new golden mussel issue that's happening down there and kind of talk to them about their treatment that they're working on. We've gotten a couple other opportunities to talk to other states about our project, about what we would do. But the biggest kind of key takeaway is there's no water body that's the same. What we apply in the Snake River won't work in like the Pend Oreille River up in North Idaho or somewhere else. Each water body takes its own unique addressing that, but having the framework is kind of our main message we provide to them of like, what do you do when, and start practicing that now, because when it does happen, you have the tools available to keep up quicker.
And last thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman, do you already have budget if there should be a few survive to this summer?
It's a great question. I know we're all at state agencies are all looking to the cuts and looking to what's going to come out of the legislative session at this time. I know my director is working very, very hard on that. I can't answer that question right now. Although we do have plans in place to monitor and continue to monitor this site. Those plans are in place and ready to go for this season once the water temps start coming up.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just one question. So what does the potash do?
Potash. Okay.
Is this the first year you've done potash?
It was the first treatment of potash. And so potash, potassium chloride has a similar effect on their gills and their respiration. It's just a little bit different of a conveyance system for that. Chelated copper we put on at 1 part per million. Potash is at 100 parts per million. And it goes on we utilize a muriated potash. So it's a crystal that you have to break up and crush. I'm sure it's used very, very widely in the agricultural industry. But for us to be able to utilize it, we did have to get a Section 18 exemption for it. We carried it out to put it underneath the ice of those potholes to have something going in effect underneath during the winter times. And it was more of kind of an insurance treatment, if you will, to make sure that if anything survived in those potholes, that we can make sure that they were addressed properly. We felt like it worked very well, and then was washed out quite completely when the spring high water hit in 25. And then this year we are looking at secondary treatment in the potash areas and those ephemeral ponds. Once we kind of get some more sustained freezing temperatures down there, to go back down and take a look at that. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much for the update. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Idaho code cleanup. Who gets to do that?
Shelley Keene.
Oh,
gets to
Shelley.
do that one, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Chairman, while Wesley's working on the PowerPoint presentation that I put together, I think I can go ahead and go forward if that's all right with you.
That would be great.
My name is Shelley Keene for the record, and I'm with the Idaho Department of Water Resources. And I've been asked to update you on our compliance with the Idaho Code Cleanup Act. And the main point of my presentation is to make you aware of this project in case you see the 2026 Idaho legislature consider related actions. Thank you. So eliminating unnecessary regulations, as you know, has been a major theme in state government during Governor Little's administration. And the latest step, called the Idaho Code Cleanup Project, is being undertaken across state government in response to House Bill 14, passed by the 2025 legislature. The legislative intent of the law is to make sure state laws are, quote, streamlined, up to date, and essential for the citizens of Idaho, end quote. And IDWR generated 2 work products in support of this statewide effort. So first, at the end of June 2025, IDWR and the Soil and Water Conservation Commission combined to send DFM the results of our comprehensive review of 630 sections of Idaho code. And for IDWR's part, the reviewed statutes were mainly in Title 42. In his State of the State address, Governor Little referred to the, quote, countless hours state agencies dedicated to this project And at IDWR, it was certainly true that we put in a lot of time on this. Most of our managers and supervisors, including Brian and his team, dedicated part of a very busy summer to the review process. In addition, water rights section staff members Dave Betts and Deb Mansfield spent a lot of time organizing and formatting the work product for us. And in this review step, IDWR identified 21 code sections that seemed outdated, unnecessary, or obsolete in their entirety. A month later, IDWR submitted a draft legislative report to DFM, and in the report, IDWR identified 22 statutes as outdated or obsolete in their entirety. In other words, we added one in that step. And on August 29th, IDWR received confirmation from DFM that it officially submitted to Legislative Services the required report on behalf of all executive agencies that had participated. And in his State of the State address that you may have watched the video of, Governor Little called this report the red tape rollback report. And he symbolically handed it off to the legislature in the form of 4 massive binders. And the report included the 22 code sections IDWR identified as outdated or obsolete. So which statutes did IDWR identify as possibly ripe for repeal? First, 42-1704, which requires the director to submit an annual report to the governor. The statute isn't really needed for the governor and director to set a reporting schedule. At least that was our view. 42-232, which establishes outdated groundwater recharge program provisions. It was added in 1978 and directed IDWR to examine recharge projects in Madison and Bonneville counties. And as you know, the recharge program and its funding has changed considerably since 1978, and it was our view that the statute wasn't needed anymore. 42-1776, which establishes the Water Conservation and Development Trust account that has been inactive since at least 1994, as we could tell, or as best as we could tell. The Water Resource Board's revolving development account, water management account, and secondary for planning, management, and implementation funds provided in 42-1750, 1760, and 1780 respectively support the same statutory functions. And then we also identified several statutes in Title 42, chapters 33 and 35 that enable the state to negotiate interstate compacts for apportionment of the water resources of Salmon Falls Creek and the Columbia River Basin. Salmon Falls Creek statutes date back to 1943, but Idaho and Nevada never adopted a compact. And Idaho did adopt the Columbia River Basin Compact, not to be confused with the Columbia River Treaty with Canada, back in 1963, but it was not ratified by all states, and Idaho repealed its ratification in 1975. So we reported that our effort would reduce the Idaho Code by 2,503 words and 5.33 pages. So how has the Idaho legislature responded to the red tape rollback report so far? In the fall, the Idaho legislature's DOGE task force met to consider various aspects of government efficiency, including the code cleanup effort in the red tape rollback report. And at its October 23rd, 2025 meeting, the Doge Task Force voted unanimously to deliver a lot of sections of Idaho Code to the Research and Legislative Division in the Legislative Services Office to begin the bill drafting process for germane legislative committee consideration. And 20 of the 22 code sections identified by IDWR were on that list. And then the remaining 2 were added at the Doge Task Force November 19th, 2025 meeting. So all 22 of the statutes that we identified were referred to LSO for bill drafting. And I think that's where things stand at this point, Mr. Chairman. Are there any questions?
Okay, board members, any questions for Shelley? Looks like a whole lot of work, but I suppose at the end it'll be a good thing. Brian?
Just one real quick, Shelley. Who has the collection of hand pumps?
Interesting question. I found that photo on the department's list of old photos. I'm not sure exactly
Well,
where
it
it was
doesn't matter. I
taken.
just thought maybe it was yours.
It is very interesting.
Okay, looks like we're good. Thank you, Shelley. Water right process backlog?
Yes, Craig Saxton, the department's Water Allocations Bureau Chief, will give that report. I'm not sure all of you have met Craig in his new role. You may recall that former Director Spackman loved to show his graph showing the backlog reductions over time. So Craig got tasked with continuing that tradition.
Okay, welcome, Craig. Looks like we're getting our. Oh, we're right there. Okay. Okay, thank you for being here today, Craig.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. As Brian introduced, I'm the Water Allocations Bureau Chief. Oops, sorry. And today I'm going to give a short update on the Water Allocation Bureau activities. We have about 16 slides. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'll try to get started here. And I'll see if I can make this work. Okay. So here's what I want to cover today. I'll give a short overview on the various processes that the Water Allocation Bureau is responsible for. This includes a 2-slide update on the adjudication program, an update on the water rights program. Then I want to talk about the Bureau, how the Bureau is reorganizing to create a separate water supply bank unit. I'll talk about our current workforce. Then I'd like to highlight some of the areas where we're moving forward to increase our efficiency and productivity. And then we'll have time for questions, of course. So the Water Allocation Bureau consists of primarily 2 programs, the adjudication program and the water rights program. The adjudication program has staff in Northern Region, Preston Field Office, and here in the state office. And adjudication programs responsible for receiving claims, preparing recommendations that eventually get submitted to the Water Adjudications Court as director's reports. And they're working in the various 5 adjudications that are active right now. And then the water rights program, we have staff in the state office and all the regional offices. Staff are responsible for processing applications for permit, issuing licenses, issuing permits, processing transfers, temporary applications, temporary changes, ownership changes, water supply bank leases and rentals. There's a lot on their plate. So we'll start out with the adjudication. Now, I understand it hasn't been too long since the board's received an update, so I'm only going to spend a couple of slides on this and not go in real deep. But So I've broken this into a couple parts. We have the active adjudications and the Clark Fork, Pend Oreille River Basin adjudication and the Bear River Basin adjudication. This is where the primary, most of the work's being done. And we call them active because we're still working on those basin-wide directors reports. In fact, Friday, we just submitted Basin 97 Part 2 directors report to the court that consisted of 995 recommendations. The second group we call the directors report submitted. These are areas that are still open for late claims. We're still working in them, but the main basin-wide directors reports are up in front of the court. Staff are working on late claims and we're still resolving objections in some of those basins, primarily objections to the federal water right claims. Then we've got the SRBA that keeps going on. The adjudication, this is primarily work done out of the state office adjudication staff. And they are working almost daily, reviewing deferred de minimis claims. And then the Kootenai River Basin, up in the very tip of the state. So the petition on the hearing to commence that adjudication is up before the court on February 24th, 2026. So in a month. So we anticipate there'll be a commencement order, but we'll see how that goes. So the workload in a nutshell, so in the Clark Fork Pend Oreille River Basin, we have 6,300 claims left to review. That's director's report I just talked about, covered Basin 97. So now we're moving into Basin 96. In the BRBA, we've got 6,000 claims left to review in Basins 11 and 13. And then we estimate another 2,500 claims to be filed in Basins 15 and 17. And then if we get a commencement order in the Kootenai, we anticipate about 3,000 claims there. The grid at the bottom kind of shows our director's report timeline. The goal here is to submit one of those basin-wide director's reports with thousands of recommendations in them to the court, one every year. So for 2027, the way it worked out, we're doing a lot of review there, but let's now move over to the water rights program. This is a very busy graph. There's a lot going on. This graph tracks that overall output of the water rights section each month. So this is the 10,000 foot view of progress each month. The bars reflect how many widgets, if you will, associated with each of the identified processes that are resolved or completed each month. And so our widgets are ownership changes, security interests processed, permits, transfer applications, temporary changes. I won't go through the whole list, but you can see them there. You know, permits, transfers. We track these numbers to ensure that we are accomplishing the things that we're responsible for. And then we use this data to adjust our priorities as needed. So adjustments and priorities can depend on the time of year, an increase or decrease in backlogs, staffing levels, legislative priorities, external factors such as curtailment orders, change our priorities. As our priorities adjust, we're always striving to keep those bars in the top of the graph. Now, this graph represents only what was completed, but for many of the processes, we break it down further and compare what's coming in, what's coming out, what's going out, and what the backlog is. And so I'm not going to go through that with all of them, but I thought we'd look at the applications for permit in a little bit more detail. So this graph shows our applications for permit received. Kind of a couple of interesting points. We can clearly see rises in 2022 that correlate with the claims taking and the Clark Fork Pend Oreille River Basin adjudication. Actually, at a more granular level, as pointed out to me, if we can link April and May in 2022, those spikes to when we were up in northern Idaho conducting claims taking workshops. And I think it's an interesting visual to show, you know, how when we commence activities in the adjudication, it affects other processes, the permitting process, we see more applications filed. That spike in 2024 represents the Lemhi Stream flow maintenance applications. Now, if we move on to what we processed, applications for permits resolved, we see that spike again in 2022 during claims taking in the Clark Fork Ponderay. We can see those applications as they're coming in. We're processing them and trying to get those permits issued and out the door. So this is our applications for permits pending resolution, our backlog, if you will. So we see a big reduction in July of 2020, and that's where we removed the permits that were held on moratorium hold out of our count. And then July 2024, we see a jump where those Lemhi streamflow maintenance applications for permit were filed. And since July 2024, we've been hovering around 600 applications for permit pending resolution. Now, just recently, IDWR has started a statewide review of the backlog applications for a permit. It's an initial step to develop a strategy to start knocking back that backlog. In the past, when IDWR has focused its resources on one issue, we've had success at reducing backlogs by diverting resources from other priorities to take on that challenge. I'm going to look at, if we look at our active transfers application, it's really hard to read. My glasses don't go back, but this goes back to 2007. From 2008 to 2012, IDWR prioritized transfers and knocked that backlog down to around 150, where it's held since about 2012. But so as IDWR focused on that transfer backlog from 2008 to 2012, the numbers of permits with proof submitted that were awaiting licensure started to grow. You can see that start to rise there. So in 2012, Director Gary Spackman at the time took the steps to reduce the licensing backlog by committing staff members from other units such as hydrology and GTS to work on licensing. I remember that it was an all hands on deck. Staff were able to reduce the backlog, whereas somewhat leveled out around 2021 to just over 500. The growth in the licensing backlog from 2008 to 2012, while we focused on transfers, shows how sometimes when we shift the priorities, it can affect our other processes. Now, this is my boss's favorite graph because this demonstrates that relationship. The graph here focuses on applications for permit received, licenses issued, and transfers approved. When we receive and are processing more applications for permit in the blue spike, we're able to issue fewer licenses, and we see that dip in the yellow, and vice versa. When we've got fewer of those applications coming in for permit coming in, and we're processing less, we see an increase in the licenses issued in that yellow spike. And this has been a pattern for over 20 years. Now that red line, the transfers, is pretty steady. So this graph represents 3 of our processes. Now, another giant workload we work on, major workload, is ownership changes. IDWR receives an average of about 2,500 ownership changes a year. We only expect this number to increase. With every director's report that goes out, we're entering thousands of new water rights into the records, those beneficial use claims that have never been reported. And as more and more water districts become active, the need to keep records updated becomes a priority for the water users as they start to see the importance of having the ownership updated on their own water rights. And then we also found out in the curtailment, it's critical for IDWR to have current ownership on rights so we can contact the people we need to contact. And so this is one of our major priorities. A little later, we'll talk about a new process we're about to complete to aid with this workload. So the water supply bank is one area that the Water Allocations Bureau is really focused on. Top of the chart shows lease applications and rental applications resolved for the last 10 years. Then the bottom chart shows the end of the year workload remaining for lease and rental applications. Now, of course, we'd like to see that end of the year workload trend getting smaller. But I think our new water supply bank focused work unit is going to help with that, move us in that direction. Let me show you what that kind of looks like here. So several months ago, actually, I think it was June of last year, I believe Deputy Director Shelley Keene reported an initiative to reorganize the Water Allocations Bureau to establish a dedicated water supply bank team. That's that group there circled in red. Zorg chart's a visual representation of the water supply bank unit. The intent's to have a dedicated unit that will allow staff to focus on the water supply bank and develop the expertise and knowledge they need to increase efficiency. Dedicated unit also allow other staff that traditionally have needed to help with the water supply bank focus on the other workloads. Now we've hired the supervisor. We've just finished interviews for that technical record specialist too. And I like this slide because it shows visually how we're moving forward to develop this dedicated water supply bank unit. The other thing you see are the red 6 vacant positions in the State Water Allocation Bureau staff. Six empty positions is 23% of the workforce in the State Office Water Allocation Bureau. So hiring is our #1 priority. But even when we've hired them, it takes time for staff to get experience. I want to talk a little bit about that. So when I was hired a long time ago, it was understood it took about 2 years for an agent or a senior agent to really get to the point where they're standing on their own. And we've got 43 water resource agent, senior agent, principal agent positions in the Water Allocations Bureau. 27 of those positions work primarily in water rights and adjudication programs. Now, if you look at that chart, you've got 55% of them have less than 2 years experience and 15% are vacant. That's 70% of our staff either have a start date after January 1, 2024, or the position is vacant. What this means is our staff is still gaining that on the job experience needed to work through some of these more complex, complicated water right questions. Our staff is dedicated, driven. I believe in the mission. And they're just going to get more efficient with time. So moving forward, what are we doing? We've got one of the things we're about to implement is the new online ownership change form. This will allow the customers to submit their ownership changes online, the supporting documents and pay fees all online. Now, this will cut down on incomplete submittals, forms submitted without payment, and just the processing obstacles of taking stuff through the mail and routing it to the appropriate parties. Right after that, we're going to do the same thing. We've got funding to build the online beneficial use form. The other thing, we've got a new AI policy for employees, and we're looking at a new AI-based software to replace our deed plotter. So when we get a change of ownership, we have to enter that meets and bounds description into what we call deed plotter, which just maps it out and gives us shape and helps us identify that the place of use on the deed matches the water right. So this new application We should be able to scan it, it'll read it, plot it, and generate that shape for us. And that'll save a huge amount of time. And that is currently in front of ITS. We're waiting to get approval to test that out. And then we're restructuring. We've already talked about that, but I really think once we get the water supply bank unit together, develop the team, establish the ownership of the workload, we're going to see an increase in efficiency. And that's the end of my presentation. Any questions?
Okay, board members, any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Greg, what happens to the water rights that were taken off the list that were subject to moratorium? Are they just held in abeyance, or are they sent back and saying, sorry, you need to provide us mitigation if you want this book?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Parker. So right now, they're pulled off. They're not returned. And they have the opportunity to provide mitigation to move forward. We haven't, at this point, taken steps to solicit or to bring that to everybody's attention. I do know that there has been some work to contact some of those applicants and find out if they're still interested in those. Specifically, I think some of that's being done out of the region, Eastern Regional Office. But that's kind of where they're at. For the most part, they're pulled out and waiting for some resolution.
Okay. Any other questions? An observation, it looks like job security. The other thing that I noticed looking through all your graphs is the ownership change thing has become a lot more, I guess, as the state grows and property subdivided, lots of opportunity to keep up with that.
Definitely.
One question, Mr.
Dean,
So I'm involved with the groundwater district, and I know one of the things we struggle with is that the state, I don't think, requires ownership changes when they close properties. They're supposed to, but it's a real struggle for people. Some the title companies don't do ownership changes, and sometimes it can be a real problem to find out. We know what the deed says, we don't know what happened to the water. Is that a problem with IDWR also?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Stevenson, I mean, as long as I've been here, that's been a point that has come up from buyers and property owners is they think that the ownership has been taken care of when they purchase that property. And yeah, it's a continuing issue. If somebody, they don't know that they need to change ownership on those water rights. And it's a matter of education. We do various, in my time, I know we've had various workshops held with realtors and explain some of these processes, and some of them are interested in that and others don't share that information.
Thanks, that's all.
okay. All right, well, we appreciate all your efforts. I know it's a lot of work, but it's necessary. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, a little bit of a quick health and wellness check. Do we need a break or are we okay?
I'll need one sometime in the, whenever's best. I can't make it till noon.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm just checking. I'm thinking maybe we get down to flood grant program or
I
something.
think that'd be a good time.
Okay, I just didn't want to hold anybody up. Next up is the state water plan update. Okay,
Right, so recall that board
Neely.
approved changes to the state water plan, and Neely will give us an update on what's happened since you made that approval.
Thank you, Mr. Patton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Barker.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I just would highlight here that you are going to be asked to take no action. This is just a briefing. Just a little bit of background. You'll recall the legislature passed Senate Concurrent Resolution 110, basically expressing support for the settlement agreement and asking the board to increase the aquifer recharge goals from 250,000 to 350,000 acre feet per year. The board, as required, sought public participation on these changes by providing public comment period greater than 60 days, including opportunities for submission of written comments and oral testimony at 2 public hearings. After consideration of public input, the board adopted these final changes on November 21, 2025. On January 9th, 2026, staff delivered a copy of these changes to the office of each member of the legislature, as well as Governor Little and Lieutenant Governor Bedke, in preparation for the first day of the legislative session on January 12th. And then, as required by Idaho Constitution, Article 15, Section 7, any changes to the Idaho State Water Plan must be submitted to the legislature on the first day of the regular legislative session following the board's adoption of the change. And pursuant to the Idaho Constitution, this change to the Idaho State Water Plan shall become effective unless amended or rejected by law within 60 days of submission to the legislature. So that clock is running now. It began on January 12th. And with that, that concludes my report, and I would stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions for Neely? Mark?
I don't know if it's for Neely, but for, have we heard any comment from the legislature on what their proposed action is on the water plan? I know when we adopted it last time, amendment, we had a hearing and each committee responded rather than allowing the 60 days to transpire. Do we have any information on that? What they plan to do?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gibbs, I have not heard anything on this topic from the legislature. So as Neely said, they can do a couple of different things. They can either accept, amend, or reject within 60 days by concurrent resolution, or they can do nothing and let the clock run, and after 60 days, it automatically is accepted. I have not heard one piece of feedback from them on what their plan is.
Okay, stay tuned. Okay, all right, that takes care of that. Anderson Ranch dam raise update.
Justin will be giving this presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, great. Get to set up your own presentation.
I just had the opportunity to get really good at it. That's what we.
Okay, all right.
Alright. So a little background on the project. The Anderson Ranch Dam Raise is a partnership project between you all and the Bureau of Reclamation to raise the existing dam structure 6 additional feet to capture approximately 30,000 more acre feet of water. So this morning, I wanted to talk to you just about a couple of things. We've got some updated project activities in the memo, but first, as you're aware, the contested case for the IWRB's water right filing for the proposed storage space is ongoing. Legal counsel and staff have been actively engaging with protestants to address outstanding issues and a potential settlement. Status conference was held on January 13th. The next pre-hearing conference was scheduled for March 11th, and we will keep you all informed as we have developments. Next, construction mitigation, water supply. So efforts to secure the water necessary to support the construction period mitigation are ongoing between staff and the Bureau. We're working to evaluate options for mitigation water to build the final EIS and help provide project costs, address concerns by water right protestants, existing space holders, and things like that. We would propose convening a storage committee in early February with you all to begin a detailed discussion on on that mitigation water proposal. Next, we have the space allocation or the allocation of the new storage space based on feedback from you all in previous meetings. We would like to revisit the discussion of options to allocate this new space created in Anderson Ranch. again, it was discussed in a storage committee. This can be discussed at the proposed storage committee in early February, and would provide you all an opportunity to take another shot at that allocation framework and get moving on that. And then the last thing I have in parallel with the Bureau, we have information regarding the project design and some updated costs that could be presented to you in the next couple of months. We're targeting that early February meeting, but we'll also keep you updated with any developments there. And with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions, but that's all I have.
Okay, any questions for Justin? Okay, Brian,
Is that storage committee February 5th then at 3 p.m.? Is that what we?
Mr. Chairman, yes. Or Mr. Olmstead, yeah.
okay. That'll be one of the topics at that meeting.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
Okay, Upper Snake Basin study.
Amy Castle is on by remote from Salmon, and she'll talk about this topic.
Okay, welcome, Amy. You must be saving your strength for the trip next week. Yeah.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. How's my volume this morning?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, great. So, yes, this morning I just have a brief update for you regarding the Upper Snake Basin River Study process and what we've accomplished to date and what we hope to accomplish in the next couple of weeks. So a quick background chronology of the process so far. Back in September 12th, at the board meeting, the Minidoka Irrigation District representatives gave a presentation on an Upper Snake Basin study proposal idea. And following that presentation, the board did direct staff to prepare and submit what's called a letter of interest to BOR. We submitted that letter of interest and the stakeholder support letters on October 14th. And then in November on the 21st, excuse me, we received official notice that the letter of interest was recommended for further consideration. So we are at that point now where we are putting together approximately 15-page joint proposal working with Bureau of Reclamation to submit by February. Due date is the 16th, which means we will submit it by February 13th because the 16th is a holiday. So that proposal will include the geographic boundaries of a study area, the study abstract, including the scope, our plan for stakeholder engagement, and a study outline and schedule. On January 16th, so last Friday, we had a stakeholder meeting via Teams. The presentation that we gave is attached to your board materials. We had, I believe, about 43 participants in that meeting. We had Chairman Raybould, Member Olmstead, and Board Member Barker participate in that meeting. I think it went well. So the next steps is to provide our draft proposal to BOR, which we will submit either today or Monday, and give them some time to include their sections of the proposal. We will have a storage committee meeting on February 5th. That's another opportunity for stakeholders to participate, attend that board meeting or that storage committee meeting and provide feedback. And then on February 10th, we have a special board meeting by which we hope to get that the final draft proposal approved and then submit on the 13th. I will say that the one change that I've heard since our stakeholder meeting last Friday, originally Bureau of Rec thought that we would hear back on whether our proposal was accepted for a full basin study by April. It sounds like it's going to be more like April through June. So there's, that's the newest, as far as timing that I've heard from Bureau of Reclamation. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will stand for any questions.
Okay, board members, any questions for Amy? Okay, we know you've been doing a lot of background work on this and we appreciate your efforts and Brian is chomping at the bit to hold his storage committee meeting in early February and see what a draft looks like.
Great. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. Members of the
All
board.
right, thank you. I think with that, we'll take a 7 to 10 minute break. Okay, we're in recess. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and reconvene the meeting here as soon as we can get ourselves situated. Mr. Patton, flood grant program awards, does Neely get to do that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, actually, you have a committee recommendation from the Finance Committee
Okay,
for a package of flood grant awards from the supplemental round and a resolution that would approve that recommendation if you choose to adopt that resolution.
okay, do you want to give us an overview of that, Neely?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief background, you'll recall that in July, you awarded $460,000 for 8 applications. Your spending plan contemplated a supplemental round of funding for flood management grants and budgeted approximately $795,000, almost $795,000 for that. The supplemental round had an application deadline of January 2nd. There were 4 applications received. Staff reviewed those, determined they meet the criteria as adopted by the board. Those 4 applications total $559,358. And you can see them right here on the screen, as well as the district breakdown. You can see here, there's 2 from the Bear Lakes Soil Water Conservation District, 1 from the Clearwater Soil Water Conservation District, and then 1 from Flood Control District 10, which is the entity that did request that the board have a supplemental round of grant awards. And as Mr. Patton indicated, staff first off, I back up that the committee did have a discussion with staff about these projects yesterday. There were representatives from several of the projects that were available to answer any questions. And the committee did make a recommendation. And this is the recommendation right here, attachment 8 to the resolution. And staff has prepared a resolution for consideration. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Okay, board members, any questions on the recommendation?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move that we adopt this resolution.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for adoption of the resolution. Is there any discussion on the motion? There being none, we'll proceed to vote. Could we have a roll call vote, please? Corey?
Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon,
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone,
Aye.
and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have our loan program. Justin, you want to walk us through these 2 applications?
Absolutely. Let me grab this real quick. First up this morning is a loan application received from the Magic Valley Groundwater District. Just kind of as a brief overview, the application is requesting $10 million worth of funding to build a pump station and pipeline to move water from Lake Walcott down through the Minidoka Irrigation District and out to the Magic Valley Groundwater District, B&B, and a couple of other irrigators. The groundwater district has held loans with you all before. Currently, they do hold one with only a handful of payments remaining. And jumping to the financial analysis, the total project's $26.7 million with a contingency of $377 for a total of $27.1 million. And yesterday, Jackson Higgs gave you all a presentation that kind of got into the details of how that's all split out. But right now, based on the financial information provided by the applicant, they appear able to make the annual payments, and based on the project, staff would recommend approval. And I can hold there for any questions, or I can jump to the resolution.
Okay, board members, any questions on the application itself? I don't see any. Let's go ahead and look at the resolution. Oh,
Question. So Justin, security required here is consistent with security required of other groundwater districts. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Partner. And I had actually meant to touch on that. The groundwater district, because it is a government entity and able to place liens on property, in this case and with other groundwater district loans in the past, we've been able to use their ability to assess their users as security for the loan rather than property. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, I think we're good. Let's look at the resolution.
Let's see, jumping down to line 30. Now therefore it be resolved that the IWRB approves a loan not to exceed $10 million from the water management account at 4.88% interest with a 20-year repayment term. Next, line 33, that the funds for the loan will come from the statewide efficiency and capacity improvements to canal systems in the amount of $5 million and the statewide monitoring and measuring grants in the amount of $5 million. And then the last one to draw your attention to is line 37, that the spending plan authorized under resolution 5125 will be amended to match the use of those two buckets for this loan.
Okay, board members, any questions on the proposed resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt this resolution.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the resolution. To second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. Corey, could we have a vote, please?
Yes. Mr. Barker.
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen.
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs.
Aye.
Mr. McMahon.
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead.
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson.
Abstain.
Mr. Van Stone.
Aye.
Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, on to the next one.
The next application I have for you this morning is a loan from the, there we go, from the Lost Valley Reservoir Company. A little background on the project. The application was submitted to you all to rebuild and raise the existing structure, increasing capacity from 10,000 acre feet up to 30,000 acre feet. Currently, you all have provided funding in the amount of $560,000 through the Regional Sustainability Priority List for work and planning prior to construction. This loan would be exclusive to construction costs. Let me jump over here. Yesterday, a term sheet was presented to the Finance Committee and worked through. That term sheet was then circulated with Lost Valley. We do have a final version to present to you all this morning along with the resolution. And I can pause here before we get to the term sheet, or I can jump right in.
Any questions? May we need to hear the term sheet before we.
Next. All right. Looking through here, and there are two changes that we caught this morning from Lost Valley, and I can talk to those two here in the notes. We've updated the interest rate to the 4.88% and adjusted the repayment term to the requested 40 years. A lot of these terms in sections 1 haven't changed, and in section 2 have not changed. Jumping to section 2, this approval will be contingent on the award of a small storage or groundwater storage projects grant from the Bureau of Reclamation, and that the grant award must be secured within 2 years. Jumping to loan security, subsection B, we've added in that approximately 480 acres owned by Lost Valley will be pledged as security. And one of the changes we need to make here is actually the next bullet point under that. The new storage space created by the project shall be pledged as long-term security along with those 480 acres. So that acreage and the new storage will continue after construction. Working through here, section C didn't change significantly. Lost Valley will adopt a resolution confirming assessment to be able to make this annual payments, and that in section 3, the issuance of a water right permit for new storage by the Idaho Department of Water Resources. And the next change that we need to make and section 4, loans shall be dispersed on a reimbursement that's consistent with the program. The changes in section 5, the repayment shall begin at the earlier of 10 years from the date of loan approval or 1 year after the completion of construction. And just as a note, that's standard for the program. That must have been something that I overlooked. All loans begin repayment 1 year after construction is completed. Yeah. And then past that, I can pause for any questions or we can jump up to the resolution.
Okay. Board members, any questions on the term sheet? Yeah, Brian.
Mr. Chairman, we probably went over this yesterday, but Justin, the loan funds won't be dispersed until the EIS, all the environmental are finished.
Yes. Yep. That is section, it's actually section 3. There we go. The last part of section 3. I can scroll down really quick. There we go. Just under the issuance of the water right permit is that federal and environmental compliance will be completed. And again, like yesterday, this isn't an inclusive list of everything. It's the things we would expect to see among others.
Okay.
Do we need to?
Okay, well, let's go ahead and look at the resolution and then let's invite those that are here representing Lost Valley if they have any comments.
Jumping to line 29. Now therefore it be resolved that the IWRB approves, subject to conditions set forth in attachment A, a conditional loan to the Lost Valley Resident Company in the amount not to exceed $13,246,500 for a term of 40 years at an interest rate of 4.88%. Be it further resolved that the loan is intended to be used in conjunction with funding from the Bureau of Reclamation's Small Storage Grant Program and to serve as the non-federal cost share of the project. Let's see. Jumping to line 37, that the chairman or his designee is authorized to negotiate or execute all agreements. We have revised be it further resolved starting on 43 through 48 to match the specifics of this term sheet. And then jumping to line 50, that this resolution, the associated loan approval will be rescinded if the company fails to satisfy the required conditions within the time frame specified in attachment A. And the last two items. Is that funding for this project shall be provided, from both the IWRB's water management account and the revolving development account, with preference for use of the water management account to the extent funds are available. And last, that upon notification of award the Bureau of the grant through the Bureau of Reclamation, that Lost Valley will work with IWRB staff to establish an approved loan disbursement schedule prior to the release of any funds. And with that, I can pause for any questions or I'm happy to
Okay,
invite them up.
board members, any questions spring to mind from the resolution? Okay, do we have, I think we've got a couple of people here from Lost Valley. Do we have at least one that wants to comment or?
Mr. Chairman, board members, for the record, I'm Douglas Jones, Idaho Water Engineering. We're consultants to the Lost Valley project. I'll keep it brief. First thing I want to do is, again, thank the staff, Justin, Cynthia, for the work they put into this. This is a bit of an odd application because it would be premature, except that we need to meet this requirement for the federal grant. application, which is due by the middle of February. So we need to have this on paper to meet that requirement that we have non-federal funding to finish the project. That's the reason why we're here now. Normally, we wouldn't be here this soon. Construction actually isn't anticipated to start until following the irrigation season of 2027. It'll be a 2-year process. So I'll answer any other questions. We had a long, thorough discussion yesterday. And I think one of the board members, Arlene, who is here, also would like to comment on behalf of the board.
Okay, board members, any questions for Mr. Jones? Okay, Mr. Lean.
Thank you. I guess most of y'all were here yesterday. What I'd like to probably just tell you, and I'll just kind of reiterate some of what I said yesterday, is that this has been going on since 1990, and the dam's 36 years old that we've been trying to get raised up. The dam's a lot older than that, but the process has been going on for quite some time. When I'm gonna fall back a little bit. Not the last time I was here, but the time before that, when we were trying to sell our water, the shares we would be having when the dam was raised, we put it out into the basin to sell water, and we sold about 13,000 shares. Idaho Water Engineering, they get 4,000 shares, so we had 16,000 to sell. And out of those 16,000 shares, I would say probably 13,000 of them, and I'm rounding numbers here, people, went to within the basin, water users right there within the basin, people who irrigate, people who use the water. And then we put it out, and we put a deadline out to the community, to the basins, the 4 valleys there, that said, look, we're probably going to put water out to maybe the east side of the country. And we put a date on it. And so if you want water, speak now, or we're going to put it out. And we put the water, the extra 3,000 shares out, and it sold pretty quick. It was like throwing meat in a piranha dish. But anyhow, it sold pretty quick. And, but I will tell you that 13,000 of those shares are right there pretty much in the valley. The other thing I want to talk to you about is, I would have to say everybody in the valley, the 3-4 valleys, are behind this project. Our local legislator is behind it, Mr. Schertz. He's behind it. I'm meeting with Brandon here after Brendan Shippey. So we have some political support behind this. I've talked to Governor Little. I've talked to Lieutenant Governor Bedke. They both said, yeah, they like the project. So it is kind of moving through, and we're building a little bit of political support as we go. Probably should have done that before, but we're dirt farmers. We're not water developers, and so that's how I'm going to leave that. So hindsight's 2020. I did have a couple questions that Justin covered them on the 1 year after completion on the resolution. And we also have in there the 40 years. Dale and I were running numbers this morning. We probably won't be using the 40 years, but I think that is something that we can negotiate back down or pay off early. I'm assuming that's a question. Is that something that can happen? I mean, it's a 40-year term, but I don't see there's no prepayment penalty in here. So I guess we're okay, or we can come back in and negotiate that back.
Yeah, that's correct. I don't, do we need to reference per term of up to 40 year?
No. It says up to 40 years on the I think on the top, and then it says 40 years down in the fine print.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, all of the board's loans are always made with an up to, and there's no prepayment penalties in the standard agreements.
Okay, so I think we can, when it comes time to execute, we'll figure that out.
We can work that out.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. The other thing I wanted to offer is, I see that Anderson Ranch was on your agenda and came up. Is that something else you guys would require, that we'd come in and give you updates of where we're at? I'm more than willing to do that. if you wanted to know when and where and how and what's going on, that's something that we could do.
Sure, I think as your project progresses, we'd be interested to hear a periodic report. That'd be great.
Okay, so, something else I wanted to tell you, the 480 acres that I told you about yesterday that lays, kind of, a lot of it lays underneath the reservoir there. There's a portion of it that comes out, right, probably within less than a quarter of a mile of where the dam is. That's where we've kind of talked to the engineers and we've talked to Sundance. Well, they'll probably do a lot of the staging, and there's also some rock on our property that we'll probably use for the dam itself if it tests good. But the reason I even tell you that is because there's and I don't remember the acronym. They've got more acronyms in this world than you can shake a stick at, but it has to do with disturbance and part of the NEPA program, but it has to do with, creating dust, traffic impact and all that, and being right there close within a quarter of a mile. That property and being privately owned is really working good. Let me think what else I was going to tell you. In our bylaws, we had our bylaws redone by Sawtooth Law. And in our bylaws, we do have the mechanics in there to, we just had them redone to go ahead and charge for the new shares. So that's in there. And then there's also, I think, language in there that is, if someone doesn't pay for their water shares, we can, one, not deliver water. And I think after 3 years, they lose their shares, or we can pull them back, or they need to have a little chat with us is what needs to happen. And so that's what there's the mechanics in those bylaws for that. So I don't know if that helps you at all, but I wanted to tell you about it because even though we might be a little archaic up there, we're not so archaic that we don't want our money. So anyhow, do you guys have any questions?
Any questions, board members?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm almost afraid to ask this question, but
I can
the
plug my
land
ears.
that the 480 acres, the portion that goes up on to the shoreline, have there been any squirrels found in that portion?
The squirrels are not on our ground.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned yesterday about squirrels. You do know that we did have a new study done,
Yes.
and we found a whole 2, and that was in the area that's even going to be flooded. There was a whole 2 squirrels there in the new study. In that, we've already shut that site off and said, hey, look, and we're working with Adams County Sheriff Department and the Forest Service, keeping people out of that area because the squirrel is a threatened squirrel. So but we're already trying to mitigate some of that right now and work for that.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Dale,
Thank you.
Do you have anything else?
he's
Dale's
good?
good. So,
Okay, all right. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. And thank you for staff. They've worked pretty good with us. So thank you,
Okay.
you guys.
All right. Okay, anything else before we have a motion to adopt?
Chairman, I move that we approve this resolution.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for the adoption of the resolution. Is there any discussion on the motion? There being none, we'll proceed to vote. If we could have a roll call vote, please, Corey.
Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon,
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone,
Aye.
and Chairman Raybould.
Aye, motion carries. We're in business. Okay. Next up, we have a class seating program update.
Yes, Nick Banish from staff will give us just a brief update on what's going on with cloud seeding at the moment.
Given the amount of activity there's been recently, it can be brief.
It's
Yeah.
gonna be very brief,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna make sure that I'm set to go on the screen share here.
So, yeah, just put it on here. Nice.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the board. I'm Nick Banish. I'm the Cloud Seeding Program Manager at the Department of Water Resources. It's nice to be with you on this Friday morning. I'd like to provide a brief update on the Cloud Seeding Program for the month of December. And I think I could probably say that at some point last month, you may have thought to yourself, this can't be good weather for cloud seeding. And I'm going to share some data here in just a second in some tables that support this idea. In some, it was not a good month for cloud seeding. Really, the big picture is that most the operations were off to a slow start, and that is because most of the state was experiencing less than ideal conditions for cloud seeding. So we'll take a quick rundown of the basin activity. And the tables I'll show in just a moment lay out each basin's 2025 numbers compared to average December conditions. We'll start with the West Central Mountains. So we're looking at the Boise, Wood, and Payette basins. We have the Boise Basin on the left-hand side of the table. We're seeing December 2025 compared to average December conditions. So for the Boise Basin, we had 5 operations days compared to the typical 12 we would usually see for December. Aircraft hours were low and generator hours were about 2/3 of average. Moving towards the middle of the table, not a much better picture for the Wood River Basin, where generally things were running at about 20 to 30% of average across all categories. A slightly improved picture for the Payette on the right-hand side of the table there, improved with respect to aircraft seating, but overall still falling short of the December average numbers. For the Upper Snake, overall conditions were slightly better. Several storms led to above normal precipitation, allowing for ground and airborne operations, and our 2025 December numbers more closely match typical December conditions. We saw appreciable run times for the generator fleet in the High Country Resource Conservation and Development Program. And I was able to join their meeting a couple weeks ago and got a nice update on operations for the Upper Snake in January. Kind of in short, early January helped out. There was a handful of storms that produced above normal precipitation. So we expect January's report for the Upper Snake to be better. In the Bear River Basin pilot program, we are working with our colleagues at the Utah Division of Water Resources to track project progress. And we're seeing some nice data come in from the operator Rainmaker's data sharing platform. A recent update to this project is Rainmaker's addition of a research aircraft for method calibration and data collection. Within the basin itself, we're talking drone operations now. We had total operations days of 7 with about 100 total flights, accumulating roughly 40 hours of drone flight time, where they dispersed about 10 pounds of seeding material. That's that 4,000 gram number. Overall, across November and December, we saw 17 drone operations flown, and these consisted of 283 flights, wherein operations dispersed approximately 25 pounds of seeding material. In the lower portion of this table, you'll see I also provided some data from the Northern Utah program, where during December, 7 storms were seeded, and that racked up about roughly 180 hours of generator run times. So overall, January conditions do seem to be more favorable, and we're seeing that in the data from the Upper Snake, while I will have an update for you on the West Central Mountains and the Bear River Basin again at our next meeting. So that concludes my update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Board members, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I just want.
Sure.
So was the issue in the Boise and Payette and Wood, was it we didn't have the moisture, or was it the temperatures were too high?
Mr. Stevenson, great question. It was both. We receive the updates from our colleagues at Idaho Power through the atmospheric modeling automated emails. And if I could summarize those across the whole month of December, they were dominated by phrases like too warm for cloud seeding or not enough moisture for cloud seeding. So it was largely a mixture of both of those conditions that you mentioned. Welcome.
Okay, Brian?
Nick, so when I look at snowpacks, I see way above normal in the Big Lost, Littlewood, Birch Creek. Those are not normally very high, but
Sure.
we don't have any flight tracks that cover those three ranges, do we?
Not in the Camas and that Medicine Lodge drainage.
High, Littlewood.
Yeah, not presently. We do have flight tracks that cover the Wood River Basin.
Yeah.
And we're in the works of evaluating a proposal for a feasibility study for the Lemhi Basin. So, but not presently.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Nick, how does the drone compare to aircraft in terms of, well, they put 10 pounds of solar iodine out there. What is that, like one aircraft run, or is that?
That's a great question, Mr. Olmstead. Thank you. I was considering this question last night, and I kind of worked it out to an average. See if I can recall what I worked up last night. I think on an average basis, an aircraft program would probably be around maybe 150 to 200 pounds of this material dispersed over the course of the entire season. So these numbers that we're seeing in the Bear River Basin pilot program from drones kind of roughly align with that. If we projected that out for the whole season, we may anticipate that in 3 months from now, it would be roughly a similar quantity of material.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, great report as to the operations. Not so great on what we've been able to accomplish, but we may get some winter weather before summer.
Yeah,
So,
I sure am hopeful for it, Mr. Chairman.
okay, thank you very
Okay,
much.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. ESPA recharge?
Matt Anders he's got both a program update and he's got some proposed resolutions for you.
Okay, welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Matt Anders. I'm going to give you two things: an update on the recharge so far this season, which doesn't require action. And then we're going to talk about proposed recharge projects, which we are asking for action by the board. So this figure here shows recharge so far this season. There's only been recharge in the lower valley below American Falls. We've recharged about 63,000. This is as of the 13th here. Northside did 50. Twin Falls Canal Company 67 and SWID 78. For total discharge, we're at about 500 right now. This figure here shows how much we've recharged for the whole season and how much was available. So on the left side of this, the orange line is the line that says how much is available. On the left side of this figure, it shows that we're diverting everything that was available for recharge. Then the orange line and the black line separate on December 1st. That's the start of the Milner bypass for Idaho Power. At that point, we start splitting the available flow. It was roughly about 250 a piece from starting on December 1st to the present. That will continue to February 15th. And then on the 16th, we'll go back to diverting everything that's available. And here's my last figure. This figure has the volume recharge so far, on the left, day of the year on the bottom. These gray lines that you see here are previous recharge seasons. So what we can tell from this figure is how we're doing so far compared to previous seasons, and we can also estimate where we think we're going to be on April 1st. So the analogous year that we're using so far this year is 2025, which is last year. So that's the green line that you're seeing here. The blue thick line is where we are so far. Those lines are very close, and they appear that they're going to stay that way. Last fall, the Bureau of Reclamation estimated that we're going to need a snowpack of 115% to fill the reservoirs and get spill to get any additional recharge. The joint forecast on January 1st by the Army Corps of Engineers and the Bureau was 115%. So that was a positive. The negative is since then, it's been dry and cold. And we can expect probably at this point that the February 1st joint forecast is going to be lower. So based on that forecast, we're expecting that we'll recharge about 125,000 this year at Milner. If the snowpack comes late in the year, like we're hoping, maybe we'll get spill and get more. But right now, about 125,000 at Milner. So that I can take questions. This is the non-action portion. If there's any questions, we can address those before moving on.
Okay, board members, any questions on the recharge program for this season to date?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Matt, if we end up with 125,000, what would the 10-year average be?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Cole-Hansen, if we just go at 125,000, we will fall below the 250.
Okay.
So that would mean next year there will be no bypass.
Okay.
It'd be interesting to see how that calculates, because if you drop off 2015 when we did less than we're going to do this year and add this year.
Mr. Chairman, we are calculating this behind the scenes. We can give you this.
But you're
Yeah.
thinking we're still going to come in under the 250.
We for sure will, because
Okay.
that bypass has a 15-year average on it. So 15
Oh.
isn't going to come off
Excuse me.
Okay.
until
Okay.
later. And just what we're seeing in the numbers is it gets worse. As soon as we start falling under, it takes a bigger year to get back to 250.
Okay.
So, but we can share those numbers with you. We are watching behind the scenes and calculating.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. You got some proposed projects to share with us?
Okay, moving on. So these are the 4 new recharge projects that we presented to the Aquifer Stabilization Committee yesterday. The committee recommended these 4 projects to the board for consideration for funding today. What I'm going to do is briefly go through each one of these projects. And if you have questions, we can address those as well. So the first project is the Bigham Groundwater District, Dubois and Riverside site. On each one of these, on the right is a figure of the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer, and there's a green dot where this project will fall. So just a summary of this project, this is a basin. It's going to be 45 acres. When it's done, it'll have a berm around it. The capital costs are $3.1 million for an estimated 30 CFS, and then an estimated 50-year cost of $30 per acre foot. There's some metrics there, as you can see. 5-year retention is 17%. And then the return to the Snake River is good on this one. It's mostly in the near Blackfoot to Neely Reach, but there is some in the near Blackfoot. Shelley to near Blackfoot Reach. With that, we can answer questions about this, or I can move on, whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Why don't we go through them and perhaps we can bundle them for approval?
Okay. Sounds good to me. So the next project that was approved by the Aquifer Stabilization Committee was the Butte Market Lake Canal Improvements Project. There was a project done by the board a few years ago looking at this. These are the improvements to implement the improvements of that study, of that engineering study. The cost is $1.6 million. The estimated capacity is 65 CFS. That includes the injection wells and any new incidental recharge on the canal itself. When we we estimated a 20-year cost estimate. We included the injection wells and the new canal recharge on that, incidental recharge. So that we're looking at this as one big project. 5-year retention is 30%. Return to the Snake River is also good in the near Blackfoot to Neely reach, but will return some water to Heisey to Shelley and Shelley to near Blackfoot. Okay, any questions on this one?
Board members, any questions on this proposal? I think we're okay.
Okay. Moving on, the next one is what we refer to as the Fremont-Madison-Wilford Canal Pilot Project. This is a new project or new style of project for the board. This is a land application. So what this means is we will be partnering with a landowner who's going to put water out on an agricultural field. It's 93 acres in this case. We think it's going to take 47 CFS. This is a 5-year pilot to try to figure out, kind of work out the kinks. Is it going to work? What do we need to know about doing this? If it works, we'll come back for consideration, likely for other projects like this. The capital cost on a project like this is very low, $42,000. This is just for measurement in the canal so we can keep track of how much water is going to the field and infiltrating. The main return to this one, to the Snake River, is the Ash and the Rexburg reach. 5-year retention is 20%. Any questions on this one?
Board members, any questions? Okay, one more.
I'm sorry, I didn't go through I forgot about this one. This one has a little different pay structure. It has $7.50 an acre foot for canal conveyance, which is our normal, but we would also be paying the landowner $10 per acre foot. Okay, and then the last project is the Southwest Irrigation District Serial Well Project. This is 2 existing injection wells that they're using right now, but they don't have the capacity in the pipeline that serves them to fully utilize these wells. So this would be a project to add a new pipeline and pump from the BID canal nearby, and it would route it to the pump or to the injection wells on a regular basis. Estimated capacity when they get everything up and running is 22 CFS for an $18 per acre foot cost. Retention is very high in this one, 88%, and the near Blackfoot to Neely impact is also the highest in this one of the 4 reaches. And with that, if there's any questions.
Okay, board members, any questions on these proposals for recharge site funding? Okay, I think there's an accompanying resolution.
Mr. Chairman,
For
there's
each-
actually 4.
Yeah, for each of those,
Yeah,
yes.
one resolution for each of them. I didn't bring them up here. I put them
Okay.
in your board materials. I
Okay.
have a copy if you want me to read the pertinent parts, whatever your pleasure.
Maybe you could highlight the pertinent parts. I think
Okay.
they're all pretty much the same, aren't
They are
they?
exactly the same. So the
Okay.
pertinent parts on each one of these is that, for example, I'll read the Bingham Groundwater District. Bingham Groundwater District presented a proposal to the Idaho Water Resources Board Aquifer Stabilization Committee on January 22nd for the Du Bois and Riverside Site Recharge Project and associated infrastructure for $3.1 million. So that same whereas is listed for each project, and we just updating the cost. So for the cost for Butte Market Lake would be 1.6. The cost for Fremont Madison be 42,000, and the cost for Southwest Irrigation District is 765,000.
Okay, any questions on the proposed resolutions?
Mr. Chairman, you mentioned you wanted to bundle them up.
I would entertain a motion to adopt all 4 resolutions in one
Go
motion.
ahead and make that motion, adopt all 4 resolutions considering recharge issues.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, could we have a roll call vote, please? Corey?
Mr. Barker.
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen.
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs.
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead.
Aye.
Mr. McMahon. Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone.
Aye.
And Chairman Raybould.
Okay, I'm about 3/4 of an aye. I'm gonna abstain from the Fremont Madison proposal. With that, the motion to adopt the 4 resolutions carry. And the next thing we have up is potential legislation of interest.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Okay, we're 10 days in. What have you got for us?
It's early, but things are starting to roll, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Let's go ahead and just jump right on in. You might recall the last time I was up here talking to you, we talked about a potential bill that was being discussed, being put forward by the Idaho Water Users Association related to the domestic exemption. Now, again, just to refresh recollections, domestic exemption allows diversion of water without a water right for certain domestic uses. Now, last legislative session, the legislature modified some of the definitions associated with that, especially when it comes to how the domestic exemption applies to subdivisions in certain parts of the state. Now, when we started implementing that new legislation, both the Idaho Water Users Association and IDWR identified that there needed to be a few tweaks to that legislation. The main problem that was identified, especially in terms of the subdivision, was that some of the developers were caught mid-development. That half of their development was being done under one definition and other half being done under a different one. The new bill that's being proposed for this year makes it so that the new definitions only apply to subdivisions applied for after July 1st, 2025. So makes that clarification that we grandfather in essentially previously authorized subdivisions. This bill has been printed and assigned Senate Bill number 1222 and will be up before the Senate Resources Committee on Monday of next week. So Paul Arrington had indicated that he was going to try to fast track this one. I think this one was the second Senate bill. I think his goal was to try to make it the first Senate bill. I think he made it as the second Senate bill. So he got it in there though, and I think that's going to be moving forward rather quickly. Next, a piece of legislation I'll talk about was also something I talked about last meeting. We discussed a little bit about chapters 9 and chapters 13 of an Idaho code. Those sections govern certain water delivery organizations. Now, over this past year, the Idaho Water Users Association and the department have worked hard on a proposed bill consolidating and updating these chapters. These chapters were pretty darn old. Some of this stuff in chapter 9 especially dated back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. So at the Idaho Water Users Legislative Committee meeting earlier this week, the committee voted to support the draft that was created by that subcommittee. And so I expect Idaho Water Users Association will be working hard to have this proposed bill introduced this session. So we haven't put it forward yet, haven't even got it RS'd or haven't sent it over to have the RS created yet, but I anticipate they'll be doing that rather promptly. Moving on, you might recall last year also that the water users created a subcommittee to explore how IDWR and the board assign hearing officers to contested case matters. One proposal that was floated at that time was to have the Office of Administrative Hearings assign the hearing officers and have their hearing officers hold contested cases from both IDWR and the board. It seems now that we are moving away from that proposal. A new proposal is being discussed that would have the department and the board modify rules of procedures to address certain issues, including a hearing officer code of conduct and presiding officer communications. So I bring this one up, not so much that there's anticipate that there's going to be legislation this coming session, but because legislation that was previously discussed, I think we're kind of moving away from in a different direction. Discussions are still occurring at this point in time, but I just wanted to make you aware because that was something I had discussed a bit last meeting. No questions there. I'll move on to cloud seeding. Nick did a great presentation, but I'm going to talk a little bit about legislation related to cloud seeding. Legislation is being circulated that would amend sections of Idaho code dealing with cloud seeding. It would do, among other things, number one, amend the legislative findings associated with cloud seeding.
would require the board to hold public meetings to discuss cloud seeding, require the board to provide an annual report on Idaho's cloud seeding efforts, and would narrow the board's current broad legal protections against lawsuits. On Monday, the Idaho Water Users Association voted to support a version of this that has been generally circulating. So I don't know if this is formally going to be introduced, but it is out there circulating at this point in time. And we will keep a close eye on that one, and we'll report back to you guys with updates with regards to that, because I understand what a significant impact that has on the board's activities. Moving on, let's talk about joint resolutions. As you are no doubt aware, a series of 4 proposed joint resolutions are being circulated that would affirm the legislature's support for the various board projects and the good work that the board is doing out there throughout the state. Now, there's a resolution for each board district. So one for District 1, Northern Idaho, one for District 2, Southwestern Idaho, one for District 3, South Central Idaho, and one for District 4, Southeast Idaho. Each resolution discusses the key projects that are taking place in each of these districts and reiterates really the legislature's continued support to fund these projects. Again, it's a concurrent resolution, no actual money attached to it, just would reiterate the support of the legislature generally for the good work that the board is doing throughout the state. These have yet to be introduced, but I would expect these will also be moving forward rather promptly. So something that we'll be keeping an eye out for when they surface. Now let's talk geothermal legislation. The city of Boise is circulating proposed legislation that would exempt certain geothermal utilities that use hot water for heating purposes, would exempt them from the water right process. A number of concerns have been raised with regards to this legislation through from a lot of different areas. The city has indicated that they have heard these concerns that were raised and would consider tweaking their legislation proposal. So I expect that we might see another version of this surface at some point in time. Again, as it begins to surface, we'll keep you guys in the loop as to that piece of legislation as well, potential legislation. Finally, there is going to be legislation proposed to start the process of formally moving the Idaho Soil Water Conservation Commission, or SWCC, within the Idaho Department of Water Resources. Now, this is going to be a change to Idaho Code Chapter 22 or Title 22, 2718, which is really the underlying statutory authority for the SWCC. And it's going to have it read such that the SWCC is established within IDWR. Now, this is really kind of the first step in is what is going to be likely a long process, or hopefully a measured rollout of the combination of the two entities. And we also understand that there may be a concurrent resolution surfacing next week that helps put a little more guidance or maybe lay out some process for how that might occur. So we'll see some more legislation related to that consolidation as well. Mr. Chairman, with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions anybody might have.
Okay, you did great. It took 3 hours on Monday for the water users to accomplish what you just did. So thank you very much. Any questions from board members on pending legislation? Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to welcome the director here. He had to run over to the Capitol and do a little business, and he's back. So what would you like to visit with us about today, Mr. Weaver?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's been a long week for all of us. And my predecessor would always tell me to know when everyone's had enough. And I think we've had enough. So I don't have anything else to report that you haven't already heard this week. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for spending some time with us this morning. I know your schedule's busy.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, non-action items. Mark, do you have anything?
Nothing.
Al?
No.
Dean? Joanne? Brian? Pat?
Nothing here, Mr. Chairman.
Dale?
I have to say, thank the staff for getting us through these meetings and they did a good job for
Okay.
us and appreciate it. Maybe, our March meeting will have maybe somebody new.
You never know.
You never know around here, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, but
We hope
Ryan,
that, we hope all the regulars are back, but
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, all right. Yeah, thank you to staff. It's been a big week for everybody. Corey, thank you for filling in, and putting up with us at least one more time. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Okay, all right. We're adjourned, but we probably should have let, Mr. Patton update us on when the meeting schedule.
Okay.
I jumped that. Got it.
No worries, Mr. Chairman. It has been a long week. Just your upcoming meeting schedule. You do have a storage committee meeting scheduled for February 5th.
Okay,
Then a special board meeting scheduled for February 10th
okay,
to take up the basin study issue. Also that week on the 9th and 11th, it looks like we'll be doing legislative presentations to the House and the Senate resource committees. Then the next regular meeting is March 26 and 27 back here in Boise.
okay. All right, with that,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
excuse me, one thing. I have a conflict on February 10th. I just want you to know I won't be able to attend either in person or by Zoom. But I will catch up on the meeting via YouTube after the meeting. So thank you.
Oh,
Sorry, I
okay.
wasn't available.
I hope it's a good conflict.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, with that, we are out of here.